Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Bracha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Zephaniah, the second chapter. Continuing from where we left off in the first chapter, we saw how, Zephaniah speaking, starting off against Judah and the heavy idolatry and wickedness that was going on there and the judgment that the Lord is going to bring upon them. And then he also, starts to go more into the prophetic judgment, right, and events that the Lord is going to bring as he, further expounds on the day of the Lord. Okay, so now jumping into Zephaniah, the second chapter, continuing on, in that prophetic sense, Zephaniah, the second chapter, is mainly dealing with prophecy, right? So events that were to take place post the time of Zephaniah prophesying about these things. Okay, so this is the book of Zephaniah chapter 2 verse 1, and it reads, "Gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired." Now this nation not desired, and even when you look this up in other translations, they have it as a shameless nation. Okay, and this is referring to the nation of Israel, but reason being, the stigma or negative connotation associated with our nation due to all the wickedness, that is going on here. But gather yourselves together, right? This is referring on to the gathering, really of the nation, but that gathering begins with the elect of the nation of Israel, right? So those spirits that were created from the foundation of the earth to be the first fruits, right? The special spirits, the remnant, that in these days when the rest of the nation would go astray, these spirits here would stay and find the right path back to the Heavenly Father through Yahweh Shai. And it is through these spirits, right, the elect, that the rest of the nation would also have that way back, right, in the kingdom. And so in this time, that gathering is happening now by way of the preaching of this gospel. Okay, and as this gospel is being preached more and more, the word is going out, and more members of the elect are waking up and are being gathered to and drawn in by this word. So that gathering together, okay, of you hearing the word, knowing that you're an Israelite, knowing the name of the Heavenly Father and the Son, knowing your heritage, putting off the wicked things you used to do and changing your ways. All right, that is forming that gathering, right? That body of the elect. Verse 2, bring and before, Slack, it says before the decree bring forth. And as we keep reading, it'll expound on what that decree is, right? Before the day pass as the chaff. So basically, gather yourselves together. In other words, come back to your proper ways, your heritage, and seek the Lord now, before that decree before the decree bring forth. And that decree is that judgment call, right, which the Heavenly Father will give to pretty much commence, right, end the period of mercy and grace in which you can seek the Lord and begin the time of sorrow, okay, and tribulation. It says here, before the day pass as the chaff, and chaff is like husk, right? The outside or the remains of like the grain and so on and so forth. And just as chaff gets blown away by the wind, these days will pass just like that. So here, what he's saying is, gather yourselves together before the Lord gives that decree, right? Before your time runs out. Right, that's pretty much what it means by the day passing as the chaff. Before the fierce anger of the Lord Yahweh come upon you. Before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you. Because at that time, the reason it's saying before is because at the time of the Lord's anger, that day, there's going to be, the doors of mercy are going to be closed. There's going to be no more exceptions. And if you haven't been brought into the fold of those that are going to be delivered, who the Lord is going to have mercy on, then you're going to be caught out there in the Lord's anger, in his wrath, and in his judgment. Verse 3, and that's why we're doing what we're doing now. Seek ye the Lord Yahweh, all ye meek of the earth. Now, when you go into the word meek, it goes into lowly, the poor, and collectively as a whole, this is referring to the nation of Israel. However, we know that it's starting, or primarily, the elect of the nation of Israel, because they are the ones that are going to be doing the seeking of the Lord. Though the whole nation would be considered like the poor or the lowly in this world, it is the elect amongst them that are going to seek the Lord. That's why, as it says here, seek ye the Lord Yahweh, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Right? When you go into that word wrought, it means to do, right? Or implement. So in this case, the Lord's judgment would be likened unto his commandments, his ways. All right. And it is the elect that are doing their best. As we read in the book of Judges, right? It mentions how from the places of drawing waters, right? Let's go there real quick. And they shall rehearse the righteous acts. And I believe that's Judges, is that 5 and either 13 or 11? Let's see. Yeah, probably 5 and 11. There we go. Judges chapter 5, verse 11. They that are delivered from the noise of archers in the places of drawing water. Now, the noise of the archers here would be likened onto the missiles, right? That destruction. And those that would be delivered would be the elect. Okay. And so, as it says, from the places of drawing water is a form of labor or work. Okay. And primarily that's here in Babylon, in the place of our captivity, where we have to work and labor. So the elect, the elect that are delivered from the destruction that is to come from this place, it says here that there, right, they shall rehearse the righteous acts of the Lord, even the righteous acts toward the inhabitants of his villages in Israel. Then shall the people of the Lord go down to the gates. So, prophetically speaking, this is the elect that would be delivered in the place of their captivity, in the place of their servitude. They would be rehearsing the righteous acts of the Lord. In other words, as it mentioned here in Zephaniah, they would be the ones who would do the Lord's commandments or follow his ways. Okay. As it says, seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord Yahweh's anger. See, so it may be, as the Apostle Peter mentioned, right? If you serve the Lord, with all diligence, then you're not going to fall, right? So if you seek the Lord, if you seek righteousness and meekness, then it may be that you are one of the elect, and in that case, you will be hid in the day of the Lord's anger, meaning you won't be found by the judgment, hence you will not suffer the destruction that's going to take place during the time of the Lord's anger. Verse 4: For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon a desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Now these the names of these places, right? These regions, these are places in the land of Israel, right? If I was to pull up a map and look up Gaza Bible map, and just get some images. Okay, maybe this might, because the names of the places change over time as well. But here's a not so bad image, right? So you can see somewhere here you have Ashkelon, you have Ashdod, you have Gaza, right? You have what's called the Gaza Strip. And did it also mention Ekron? Right, it mentioned Ekron, which on this map at least they place it right here. So this is really around like that coastal region, right? In the past times, the territory of the Philistines. Okay, and in modern times, you have the Amalekites and then also some Ishmaelites up in this region today. But as it says, for Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon a desolation. They shall drive out Ashdod at noonday, and Ashkelon or Ekron shall be rooted up. Now, what it's saying here is, when you read in prophecy, right, chapters like the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, I believe Zechariah, I think Zechariah mentions it as well, but ultimately, when the destruction comes, the land of Israel, or Palestine as it is known as today, is also going to be destroyed, okay, in the war, in the Third World War's War. and Russia, amongst other nations, are going to play a key role in that. That's prophesied in the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. Now, leading up until that point where the land is turned into, this war zone, you're going to have people, right, starting to flee and leave that place. Like right now, you can see that there's a lot of tension and chaos and war going on around this region right here. And that's causing people to migrate and to leave because it's getting dangerous. And as it starts to escalate more and more up until the point where it becomes a desolation, you're going to have more and more people flee from that region, okay, until that place is actually ultimately destroyed. So that's why I mentioned these regions being forsaken and then made a desolation, right? Because eventually people are going to, flee from that region, and then it's going to be destroyed in the war. And then, of course, it's going to be built back up. Verse 5, woe to the and so we're seeing this now, right, as it's building up, and it's eventually going to hit that climactic point in prophecy where it's just going to be completely desolate. Woe to the inhabitants of the seacoast, right, which when it talks about that sea, it's really dealing with the Mediterranean, right, because it's dealing with the same subject here, which are these regions around that coastal plain, right? So as it says, woe to the inhabitants of the seacoast, the nation of the Cherethites, which when you go into the Cherethites, they have them here as a tribe or a part of the Philistines, okay, which we know that their portion or where they dwelt was also in the land of Israel. The word of the Lord Yahweh is against you, O Canaan, the land of the Philistines, right? So it's still dealing with the same region, the same land or territory. As it says, I will even destroy thee, that there shall be no inhabitant. See, so as we mentioned, the Lord is going to dissolve that area. That's also in the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter, get into the latter verses, as the Lord mentions Philistia being dissolved, right? Which is talking about the land of Palestine. And how is it going to be dissolved? By way of that fire from those nuclear missiles. Okay, so continuing on, verse 6, and the sea coast, and we know this is prophecy because this hasn't happened yet. At no point in history has that land been actually made desolate by like how it's being described here. So it says, verse 6, and the sea coast shall be dwellings and cottages for shepherds and folds for flocks. And this is a metaphorical way of referring to the desolation that's going to take place. As it mentioned, there's going to be no inhabitant, right? So when you can imagine a plain where shepherds would take their sheep to graze, right, and to eat. Those places, you wouldn't typically see houses or people there. It's just a plain field. It's kind of like abandoned, right? Like a wilderness, but something along those lines. So this example is being used here to highlight what's mentioned in the verse above about how this place is going to be made desolate. That's why it likens it onto the dwelling and cottages for shepherds and the folds for their flocks. So like a place where they would come to, like a pasture, right, where they would come and feed their flocks. Verse 7, but we know that's temporary because pertaining to prophecy, that land is going to be built back up again. Verse 7, and the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. See, so once it's destroyed, made desolate, it'll be built back up again. But this time it's going to be in the possession of, as it says, the house of Judah, and as a whole for the nation of Israel, right? Because the land is going to be back in our possession. And when you read in the Torah, we have the division of the land, right? Which portion goes to which tribe, X, Y, and Z. It says here, they shall feed thereupon. In the houses of Ashkelon shall they lie down in the evening. For the Lord Yahweh their God shall visit them and turn away their captivity. So pretty much once those places are made desolate, the inhabitants there right now are driven out, because of the war. And then things get built back up. The true inhabitants, those that the land truly belongs to, are going to be brought back in the land, and we're going to get to enjoy the land, right? As it mentions, lying down in the evening, and these are just ways of referring to having peace, right? Being able to enjoy the actual land. Then it mentions the Lord visiting, right, us and turning away our captivity. The turning away of our captivity means the Lord is going to take us out of this state of captivity, of being subject under, these other heathen nations right now, in particular under the Edomites, because they're the ones in rulership right now. Now, there's something on my mind that just escaped me right now, but see if it'll come back. Yeah, if it comes back, I'll mention it. If not, it's fine. But yeah, that's the point right there, right? The Lord is going to turn away our captivity, and he's gonna bring us back to the land, and we're gonna have it in peace. Verse 8, I have heard the reproach of Moab and the revilings of the children of Ammon, whereby they have reproached my people and magnified themselves against their border. Now keep in mind, right, that the ancient Moabites and Ammonites were neighbors to us, right? They were mainly around the east, right, on the east of Jordan. They were neighboring our land, okay? And yeah, you had different periods of time. We went to war with them. We had them there are times when, during the time of King David, right, you might have had some temporary form of peace with them. But overall, even an example would be during the time of our captivities, like during the time of the Babylonian captivity, X, Y, and Z, these nations basically came against us, along with the Edomites, right? Spoke against us, and as it says, magnified themselves against their border, right? And now, in terms of in terms of the revilings, which means like to speak reproachfully against, and this is what they did back then, and they even do that till today. Okay, now, though it's not just Moab and Ammon, right, which the Moabites are the modern day Chinese and the Ammonites are the modern day Japanese, it's not only them that do this. However, the Lord is in here particularly focusing on them. Okay, so as it says here, and even though they do these things now, and they did these things in the past, remember the scriptures say the Most High requires that which is past. So he's going to pay them back along with the rest of these nations for that, regardless of how long ago it was. Verse 9, therefore, as I live, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, surely Moab shall be as Sodom, and the children of Ammon as Gomorrah. And we know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The Lord brought judgment upon that place and pretty much destroyed it with the inhabitants of it. So what the Lord is saying here is he's going to bring judgment upon Sodom, Moab, and Ammon, as he brought judgment upon Sodom and Gomorrah. Even the breeding of needles, breeding meaning like a dwelling place, and needles going into, forgot what it was. Let me look it up again. Right, it says here, needles, weeds, a kind of weed, right? So you can imagine, typically, if you have people dwelling in an area, planting crops and all of that, when they have weeds and thorns and all of that, they remove it. But when you have a land that is now a breeding or dwelling place of these things, then it shows you that it's desolate. People are not there anymore. It says, and salt pits and a perpetual desolation. The residue of my people shall spoil them. The residue of my people are those that remain of the nation, which are the elect, right? That remnant. And as it says, they shall spoil them, and the remnant of my people shall possess them. So when the Lord puts us back in power, we are going to have possession over these nations. And as it mentions here in particular, Moab and Ammon. So they're going to be subject or servants or captives under us. Verse 10, this shall they have for their pride. So this will be their judgment as a result of that pride that they've had, because they have reproached and magnified themselves against the people of the Lord of hosts. So they spoke reproachfully and boasted themselves and put themselves in a position as to be above us. And the Lord is going to pay them back for it. Verse 11, the Lord Yahweh will be terrible unto them, for he will famish all the gods of the earth. Famish meaning, when you look into it, it basically means to make lean. All right. But you can imagine in this sense, to destroy, right? All the gods of the earth, which is going into these idols, right? All these idols, these different belief systems, these different religions, the Lord is going to destroy that off the earth. and men shall worship him, everyone from his place, even all the isles of the heathen. So when the Lord brings this destruction and his name gets glorified and feared, yet once again, everybody, right, from the nation of Israel on down to the heathens, are going to serve and worship the one true living power, Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai. As it mentions the isles, which is islands of the heathen, because they're gonna follow our ways. And that's also in the book of, I think, Zephaniah 14 or 13, one of those, all right, where it talks about the nation that will not come up to serve the Lord. They're not going to receive water, right? They're going to basically be judged. Ye Ethiopians also, ye shall be slain by my sword. So then the Lord also mentions them as to how they're going to suffer the Lord's judgment. Now, when the Lord mentions here his sword, that's his weapon, right? By which he's going to bring judgment. So it in this case, it would be in these times, right, the nuclear missiles. Those are the weapons of the Lord's indignation. But it really depends on what form the Lord decides to manifest it in, right? Sometimes it's the Lord bringing a nation against, in most cases, us, right? Sometimes it's the Lord bringing famine. Sometimes it's the Lord bringing, pestilence. Sometimes it's the Lord using Esau, as he's referred to as the Lord's sword. And in various other parts of the scriptures, the sword of the Lord is referred to as, or is used to represent or describe the nuclear missiles, which in this time of future judgment, that's going to be the primary weapon by which the Lord is going to bring this major judgment to come, right? This destruction. Verse 13, and he will stretch out his hand against the north and destroy Assyria, and will make Nineveh a desolation and dry like a wilderness. Now, although at this point in time when Zephaniah is prophesying about this, Nineveh and Assyria were there, right? Because at this time, I believe, they were pretty much the world superpower at this time. And although they hadn't been taken down or fallen yet, right? Because I believe Nineveh went down somewhere around 611 or 609, somewhere around that time BC, by the hand of the Assyrians. Salakia, not the Assyrians, because Nineveh, they were ruled by they were the Assyrians, right? But it went down by the hand of the Babylonians and the Medes, right, and the Scythians and so on. But even though at this time Assyria was in power, this isn't referring to the historical, right, actual Assyrians, but rather, being that this is in a prophetic sense, is referring to America or Babylon the Great, which is also known as Assyria or Nineveh, right? One example is in the book of 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, somewhere around the 30th verse, when it refers to the Carmanians raging in wrath and pretty much joining in the war, right? Referring to World War III. And those Carmanians are referring to the Persians, right? The Elamites. And it mentions them wasting, a portion of the land of Assyria. It's not talking about the actual Assyrians, but it's rather talking about America. And we also know this because, as we're reading here, the desolation that is referred to here, this judgment that will come upon Assyria and Nineveh, is not how the ancient Assyria went down, right? They were taken down by these nations, and people still dwell there. When the Babylonians and the Persians took over the Assyrians, they inhabited that land. They ruled it, and people were still dwelling there. It wasn't made a desolation or a dry wilderness. So we know it can't be applied to ancient Assyria or Nineveh. Verse 14, and this is part of what makes understanding the scriptures difficult, because just because you see the name Assyria, you see the name Nineveh, you might associate it with the actual historical parts. But there are scriptures where they use historical names, but they actually refer to prophetic places. Verse 14, and flocks shall lie down in the midst of her. All the beasts of the nations, both the cormorant and the bittern, and this should now bring to mind some precepts, right? Because there are, when you see I do the cross-reference, there are a couple of precepts that also describe Babylon being destroyed and being the habitation of these desert creatures and these spirits of devils, right? And listing the cormorant and the bittern there as well. It says, and the bittern shall lodge in the upper lintels of it. So this is referring to, this prophetic Assyria being made desolate, and now, being made the habitation of these beasts, right? It says, their voice shall sing in the windows, desolation shall be in the thresholds. So now it's describing like a broken down building, right? The lintels, the windows, the thresholds. For he shall uncover the cedar work. Now the cedar work is, like the foundation. Right? When you're building a building, you lay the foundation and all of that. And a part of the reason why they use cedar, I looked this up before, and I believe it was because the cedar wood has, if I remember correctly, it's like this natural oil that prevents it from decaying, like at a pace in which other kinds would decay. So it's very good for actual like buildings. That's why they used a lot of it back then. Now let's cross-reference this 14th verse, Zephaniah 2 and 14, and you will see, for example, Isaiah the 13th chapter, right, which is another one, and it describes in Isaiah the 13th chapter, in these verses 19 on down, it's talking about America or Babylon, right? Babylon being destroyed. It mentions the Medes, but it's really referring to the Russians, right, in prophecy, and how they're going to destroy that land, and how all that's going to be left. Well, let's read it real quick. This is Isaiah 13 and 19. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. So it's going to be destroyed. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures. And the owl shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. And this is synonymous with Zephaniah 2 and 14, all right, about the cormorant and the bittern dwelling in there, singing in the windows and yada yada. Here's another example, Isaiah 34 and 11. Isaiah 34 is also another prophetic chapter dealing with the destruction of America, but it's written in a way where it's likened onto a sacrifice being made. But once again, it mentions what? But the cormorant, right? Let me actually go here to Isaiah 34 and read up at verse 8. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, as we're reading in Zephaniah 2, and the year of his recompenses for the controversy of Zion, and the streams thereof shall be turned into pitch. This is going to be done by way of that fire that's going to happen, that's going to hit the land, and the dust thereof into brimstone, and the land thereof shall become burning pitch. It shall not be quenched night nor day, the smoke thereof shall go up forever. From generation to generation it shall lie waste. None shall pass through it forever and ever. Similar to as we read in Isaiah 14, the Arabians shall not pitch tent there, and nobody's going to come and dwell there from generation to generation. Verse 11, but the cormorant and the bittern shall possess it. Going back to Zephaniah 2 and 14, as we read, right? Both the cormorant and the bittern shall lodge in the upper lintels of it. This is not what happened when ancient Assyria and Nineveh went down. But this is what's going to happen when America gets destroyed and made desolate, as we're reading of in Isaiah 34 and 11. The owl also and the raven shall dwell in it, and he shall stretch out upon it the line of confusion and the stones of emptiness. And the line of confusion and the stones of emptiness is referring to the post the destruction, how the line of confusion, meaning that you're not going to be able to tell, the landmass, right, compared to how it was before, how it's been divided state by state, city by city, buildings here, monuments over here, all that is going to be destroyed, and it would just look like a heap, of just desert, burning fire and smoke, and eventually just a desert. Now, finishing off in verse 15. This is the rejoicing city that dwelt carelessly, that said in her heart, I am, and there is none else beside me. How is she become a desolation, a place for beasts to lie down in? Every one that passeth by her shall hiss and wag his hand. Once again, referring to America, right? And this should bring to mind Isaiah the 47th chapter, right? That said in her heart, I am, and there is none else beside me. And Isaiah the 14th chapter, about how those that see her shall look down upon her, right? And let's do a quick cross-reference. So we can see, we have Isaiah 10. We also have Isaiah 47, right? Isaiah 47:7, another precept about America. And thou saidest, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it, right? Going into that mindset of, as we read here in the 15th verse, I am, and there is none beside me. So now here it's saying, when this place gets taken down, it's going to be looked at as how? This was like that, you know, the city that never sleeps. So how is it destroyed? And then now let's get Isaiah 14. Here we go. Isaiah 14:4. All right, it says here that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. So in other words, the Lord has stripped them of their power, destroyed them, abased them, and brought them down. And when you read more in Isaiah 14, you'll come across the verse that mentions people looking down, looking narrowly upon this place, right? And really primarily upon Esau, Edom, okay, because they are they're like this place personified, right? So, that pretty much brings us to the end of the book of Zephaniah, the 2nd chapter. Okay, as we went into, it's mainly all prophecy dealing with the elect being gathered, and then, prior to the destruction that the Lord is going to bring, and the mentioning of some of these primary nations in which the Lord is going to bring judgment upon, finishing with Babylon. Okay, so with that, Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.